Hello and welcome to another episode of the Black Diamond Podcast. This is episode 16. Dwight Gooden / Whitey Ford. No meme players, no bullshit this week. He's Jerry. I'm Chris, and another Chris out there that remains a suspect. His name might contain the word ass in it.
He decided to be that 2 years ago. Couldn't be that tonight for some reason.
Yeah, no, it's those revenge games. I think you were kind of saying in the Discord that he kind of his role in the Mets kind of not going as far as maybe they should have a couple of years ago, kind of goes unnoticed and unstated by the fan base.
Well, I mean, Scherzer catches most of the heat for that, because he was the guy that we brought in, and he'd won a World Series and he had pitched for the division rival, so like that kind of felt like right-handed Tom Glavine in a sense. But Chris Bassett did the same thing, and they were both the final games of each series, the last game of the Atlanta series, and then the game that ended their season against the Padres. He did not show up to either one of those, and then as soon as he signed with Toronto, he's out here doing the pitching in New York isn't for everyone. It's hard. And I'm the entire fan base like, literally you. It's the same picture, Your Honor. What are we doing?
My brother in Christ. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Scherzer's always the one that I kind of remember back to when that whole thing went down. Mainly because it was game one, and in a 3-game series, game one is pretty crucial. And I remember meeting up with one of my friends at a Buffalo Wild Wings, who's a big Mets fan, to watch that game. And I remember, I forget if he was wearing a Scherzer jersey or if he might have been wearing his DeGrom jersey. But either way, I just remembered pulling up, and he just had he had a big tall, it was kind of poetic. He had a big tall glass of beer, and he just had his hand in his face and was just shaking his head. And I think Scherzer, I mean, I know he won the World Series, with the Nats in 2019. But aside from that, I think he has had a reputation of kind of being kind of pitching poorly in the playoffs. So that was just kind of another blemish on his playoff resume. And then
it bugged me kind of last year with Texas. But then as that postseason went on, it's well, he's not actually really helping them at all. So it wasn't easy to see him get the win and then celebrate, but also deep down he can know that he had no part of that.
You got an A on the group project, but it wasn't really because of you. But we will start the show just with a quick RIP to a New York Mets legend, Mr. Ed Kranepool, an all-time Met. According to Don LaGreca, he's the guy whose jersey you should wear, because he's the guy who's pretty much been the quintessential franchise Met. Have they had better players in their career, or better players in their existence? Yeah, definitely. But he was the one. He was the good player that was there for. He was a good player that was there for a long time. And, I know that neither of us really grew up watching him, but he's someone that, a lot of Mets fans, find out, at least Mets fans are in our generation, they find out from their parents, and, then we're obligated, we're obligated as citizens to pass it down to our use. So, definitely a Mets legend and ambassador. R.I.P. Ed Kranepool, and T's and P's out to his family.
I mean, and still in a lot of top tens in franchise history, even now. Of course, it holds the record for most games played, of course, because he was there from the very beginning. I think he might have been 19 years old playing on the 62 Mets, but even still today, looking at the all-time franchise marks for career top tens, you look at top 10 in runs scored, he's still third in hits, and He only recently, he held the hits record for a long time until David Wright passed him, I want to say in either 2012 and I believe Jose Reyes passed him when he came back towards the back end of the 2010s. He's third in total bases. He's fourth in doubles. In terms of RBI, he's fifth. So still a pretty important, and I believe still top 10 in extra base hits in franchise history. So that's I look at the top 10. He's ahead of Edgardo Alfonso and Daniel Murphy, who are two players that are highly regarded in our franchise history, and rightfully so. Pete Alonso just passed him on the extra base hits list. So that kind of tells you the company that he's in all time. And of course, part of the 69 miracle and on the 73 team as well. I mean, for the first 14, 15 years of the franchise, if something happened, Ed Kranepool was there. And like you said, I didn't get to see him, but he was one of the first Mets I learned about from my parents and my grandparents. And so, I know his history pretty well. And, if I have kids, and I may not raise them to be Met fans, I don't think I would suggest them that, but they'll know about Ed Kranepool. That's for sure.
Yeah, they can make their own choices.
Yeah.
At the whenever that time's appropriate for them. Maybe they'll be Tampa Bay Rays fans if you're still in that area, or whatever direction they go. I mean, I'm sure as long as they're not like Braves fans or Phillies fans, you'll be able to you'll still be able to love them and cherish them as your own. But
you always say you want better for yours.
You do want better for yours, but it's like you want better for yours, but it's like you don't want them to not at the expense of them choosing the enemy.
Oh, correct. Yeah, I will be steering them away from that. But
if they wanted to choose, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to think of a good team that Mets fans don't hate.
You could be a Minnesota Twins fan. I don't care.
Honestly, I mean I don't know how much better that is, but
but do the Minnesota Twins have a comedic history of losing? Are they a meme team? Other than when they play you guys. Other than that.
Yeah, their only real meme is losing to the Yankees in the playoffs every single time. Other than that, they're generally
my kids over that. It's like, hey, yeah, fuck them too.
They're generally a respectable franchise, a respectable team that usually puts together. They spend money and they put it together enough of a good product to get into the playoffs and lose to the Yankees, but not a whole lot.
One day they'll ask me who Johan Santana is, and I'll be like, son, do I have time for you?
Yeah.
Tell me about this wonderful man.
Grab me a beer, son. We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, let me fire up the old YouTube. You're going to check this out.
Yeah.
I would say they could be a San Francisco Giants fan, but I also know my grandfather being a Brooklyn Dodgers fan would not approve, so
you can't.
I immediately had to walk that back.
Yeah, you definitely can't poke the bear in that sense. But I really feel the only reason the Mets are a meme team is kind of the fact that they lose in New York, and so that always brings
I always ask every year is if you're gonna lose, just lose normally.
Yeah, lose normally, lose quietly, but
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Teams that are bad in New York, maybe with the exception of the Islanders, teams in the Brooklyn Nets, teams in New York just aren't capable of losing quietly.
I suppose in a way that's true, yeah.
When the Yankees when the Yankees go on their bad slides, you hear about it.
Yeah.
When the Mets, when the Mets met or whatever they say, that's something you hear about.
Mets.
When the Jets, LOL Mets, LOL Jets. It's winning's the only thing that'll end the stigma, for any of those franchises. I mean, same with the Knicks. I mean, the Knicks had been pretty terrible for a pretty extended period of time, and are just now kind of starting to see a glimmer of hope or light at the end of the tunnel. But when you're bad and you're in New York, for the most part, you're gonna hear about it. But let's talk about the present day Mets, who actually don't really suck. They've been pretty hot as of late. They were on a 9-game winning streak not too not too long ago. They lost on Sunday to end that streak, but then they won again yesterday. So they're 10 of their last 11, going for 11 out of 12 if they can pull off this. If they could pull off this comeback against the Toronto Blue Jays and give Chris Bassett the revenge he deserves, or the revenge they deserve, not the revenge he deserves. He's the last person that deserves to get revenge.
Well, it's not helping here in the seventh inning. Alex Young is in, and the Jays already have one across, and oh no, they're going to catch that. All right, I thought that was going to be a double in the gap. That would have made it 7-2, but they had a window here in the top of the seventh just now, and then they didn't cash in. I think that might have been their one little moment for the night, but they've impressive little run that they went on there. Certainly helps that run starts against the White Sox, but I mean, it should be noted, I know Boston was sliding, but they were still in playoff contention until the Mets basically closed that window for them. And then they took 2 of 3 from the Reds, which not easy. Like the Reds made that a difficult series. And also, like, don't forget the fact that if not for the Corbin Carroll grand slam and the Jackson Merrill walk-off, that would have been 13 in a row.
Yeah, they would have swept.
That would have been from the end of the San Diego series. Yeah, it was through the end of the San Diego series, through Arizona, then the actual 9-game stretch that unfolded. So they basically went like 9-3 over or I think I'm forgetting another win in there. Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it would have been like 13-2.
Yeah, so they swept the White Sox. Yeah, so they swept the White Sox, and then they went 2-1 against, or they split with the Padres, so it was 2-2, and then they went
2-1 against Arizona
against AZ. So that right there, just doing some quick maths, that would be that right there is like 6-3.
Actually, that could go back even further because the series before San Diego was Baltimore, and they won 2 out of 3 in that series. So this has been quite a stretch for them. And I also credit them. I can't give them enough credit also for the fact that those 2 losses against San Diego and Arizona came in the span of 48, 72 hours. Those are 2 very tough. They were games that they were winning and lost late. And back to like the vibe right after the Corbin Carroll game was maybe they ran out of gas. Maybe, maybe it was, they overachieved to get as far as they did here. And no shame in running out of gas in August with this team. Like, we didn't expect much.
Yeah.
And then they pulled off this run after that.
It's like people were kind of thinking at that point, like, the fact that we even got like to this point was kind of a miracle given how the season started and what the expectations were, and what we're working with as a team. Like, I think everyone was kind of like satisfied with the season to an extent and like ready to pack it in. At least the fans were, but the team had other ideas. And I think we talked about this in in the Twitter DMs the other day, how like they've had so many of these like gut punching, like gut wrenching, like season's over, pack it in, when does football start type of losses. And every time they bounce back, and now they find themselves with a half game lead over the Atlanta Braves.
And those are the type of losses that over the past 10 years, I would say, normally have that have ended seasons that they don't get up from. A lot of people have tried to draw similarities between this season and 2019, where they were in an early hole. I think that year it was June rather than May. Yeah. But that year they got impossibly hot in August, cooled off a little bit at the end of August, but they were still in it. And then there was that game at Nationals Park where they were up 10-4 in the 9th and lost. And they never really got off the mat from that game. And I think they ended up finishing like 3 or 4 out.
This was 2019?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember like how hot that Mets team got at one point. Like I remember the Pete Alonso walk off, and his teammates ripping off his jersey, and then I think that's like he did like the in stadium interview, and that's where he like coined the term like LFGM, and like that became like a rallying cry, and then like from there they rode that for like another month until the aforementioned loss to the Nationals, and then the Nationals go on to win it all.
Well, there was the nationwide power outage. I don't know what yeah, real shame there was never a World Series that year. I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, you're talking about 2003, right?
No, 2019. There was no World Series in 2019. They
you were talking about that big power outage happened in 2003 though.
Well, no, this was a nationwide power outage. You don't remember that? Like nobody could go anywhere for like 3 weeks. It was wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I was
seen COVID coming before then. I guess maybe it would have.
Yeah. They knew something. It was the 5G. We'll blame the 5G.
Yeah.
On that one, but it was.
There's been years where the Mets have kind of hung around for a little while, or it's like, oh, hey, they're kind of punching above their weight here, and then it's just one of those inexplicable. How did they lose that kind of game? And then you look up and they've lost 10 of 11, or something where you're like, oh, they're out of it. There's been plenty of points, even since they started this run, where it's like they lost a couple extra inning games to the Marlins. They lost a series to the A's where you're like, okay, this is where it ends. And then they just make you keep thinking they're in this. So
you got my Diet Coke. Call me Mike Francesa.
Hey, you audition. You always say you dress for the part you want. So
yeah.
I mean, at this point, you just have to keep winning series. I mean, it's so torturous this time of year that you're not only worried about your game, but your scoreboard watching. And like tonight, the Braves are up 12. I believe that game's final now, but they were up 12.
That game's over. Yeah, the Braves won. So
like even early on, you're like, all right, we're not getting help tonight. And then it's like, all right, well, what are the Padres doing? What's Arizona doing? And like that's the torturous part. But really, like just keep winning series. If you do that enough, you should be there, I would think.
Yeah, and luckily the Yankees were, we'll get to that a little more later, but luckily the Yankees were also like kind of able to help you guys out a little bit by taking 2 out of 3 against the Cubs. That gives like a little bit of a cushion, and like, kind of almost turned, at this point in the season, it kind of almost turned it in from like a 5 or 6 team race more to like a 3 or 4 team race, like for those wild card spots. Because like if the Cubs like swept the Yankees or taken 2 out of 3, then like you're looking at their game. You might even still be looking like at the Cardinals, and so then you're like looking at your game plus potentially 5 or 6 other games.
I think the Cubs playoff percentage odds are down to 1.6, and I know they were double digits last week.
So you're saying
that was basically the fire extinguisher on their little run.
Well, you're very welcome. Happy to help. And we definitely we definitely needed that too. But I do have a question, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question or not. But me and my friend, who's a Mets fan, we were talking last night, and so like. Basically, like when the Mets and Braves like have the same record, it seems like every any website you go on to like view standings, it had the Braves like over the Mets, as the wild card team rather than vice versa. Like they had the Braves in and the Mets as like the odd team out, and he was telling me how that didn't really make sense to him because. I believe the Mets have a better head-to-head record against the Braves. Like, however many games they played each other, they've won more. The Mets have won more games. So one, I don't know what the tiebreaker is that decides that, or if that's just like kind of a placeholder, or like if the Mets and Braves finish with the same record and they're tied for the for the third wild card spot, would we get a game 163? Like between the Mets and the Braves, like one single elimination game to decide who goes on?
I don't think so, because I know when they made those rule changes where they're like, yeah, you're just never going to really see those anymore.
They did say no more 160. Yeah, which is a shame, honestly.
Because it should have happened in 2022, but that was the first year that those rules were implemented. And at that point, it was the Braves had the tiebreaker on us record-wise.
That's right. But you guys did finish with the same record that year.
So this was from the there's someone who actually does a Mets Magic Number Twitter account, and this was as of this morning. We have the tiebreaker against the Cubs, Pirates, Nationals, Cardinals, Padres, Diamondbacks, and Reds. The Giants and Dodgers have it against us. Still to be determined, Philly, Atlanta, Milwaukee. But I think as of right now, we have a better record against Atlanta as of now. We do have one more series with them that last week, which boy, I'm not looking forward to that show.
Yeah. So the tiebreaker is head-to-head record, right?
I stand corrected. They are 5-5 against Atlanta. So that is to be determined.
Is there a second tiebreaker after that, like record versus divisional opponents, or like how does that work?
You know what? Let me look that up, because actually that could be vital, because I think it's a 4-game series we have with Atlanta. Ooh. So if we split,
and this is
it's a 3-gamer. It's a 3-gamer because we have a game from April that we haven't made up yet. So originally that was going to be just 2, but instead now that Thursday that we would have had off, that's going to be a makeup game now.
And that's that is next weekend, correct?
No, that's the second to last series is the one in Atlanta.
Oh yeah, that's right. Last week of September they play each other.
Let me see. So,
and that's in Atlanta.
Yeah, not totally panicked about, no go, nothing at all.
Everything's fine. Don't write in the newspaper that we're worried.
No, don't say that my anxiety is through the roof, like that. I'm not going to look like that one Orson Welles commercial during the entire show.
Yeah, you don't need any unnecessary doctor appointments popping up or anything. Prescribing.
Gary, what did you think?
And then you
determined in this order: head-to-head record, intra-divisional record. If the head-to-head record is also a tie, but it wouldn't be in this case because it's 3 games and we're at 5-5, so somebody's going to be on top. If the head-to-head record is also a tie, then the involved club's record within their division will break the tie. This applies even if the tie is for a wild card spot between 2 teams that do not reside in the same division. The team with the superior intra-division record would win the tiebreaker. In the event of a head-to-head and intra-division record tie for the involved teams, then the tie would be settled based on how they fared against teams within their league, but outside of that division. So for an AL East team, it would be their record against the teams from the AL Central and AL West.
Interesting.
There's actually 2 more after that.
Oh, wow. No, honestly,
it's last half of intra-league games and then last half of intra-league games plus 1.
Honestly, that is way too much. They should just bring back the game 163. It's like those games were exciting.
I feel like they never failed. I feel like every one of those, there was a reason to watch and you stayed watching.
Yeah, there's always a reason to watch and always a reason to stay tuned in. Like they always ended up being like these close, crazy games.
Oh, yeah.
Like very competitive because it's like basically like it's a I could see why maybe they wouldn't want to do it just because I guess they got away from the 1-game wild card for a reason because of baseball's all about large sample sizes and
and it does suck in a case where it's like 1 call in a game 163 or a wild card game and you're done. You played 5-6 months for 9 innings.
Right.
Which, granted, 7 games is small, but it's 7 games. That's still something.
Yeah. Like if you lose game 1, you still have a chance for redemption the next day. I could
if the infield fly rule game had happened to any other team, I'd be like, wow, that sucks.
Yeah.
It happened to the Braves though, so I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, it couldn't happen to a worse group of individuals, a more
Like
deserving.
also slick. I think the best baseball game, and arguably, I think this might be an off-season topic, or maybe in a couple weeks. But I think maybe the best baseball game I've ever watched was that Tigers Twins game 163 in '09 for the AL Central. That game went 12 innings, and it felt like from pitch one until the end, I was just like, wait, what's gonna happen now? It
Yeah,
never felt like that game stopped changing, and it's like, sign me up for that. I'd rather that than, I mean, and I get it's because they wanted to go the expanded format, and you'd be jamming schedules and logistics and all that stuff, and it's like,
yeah,
so
like
maybe it's not worth it. Maybe
yeah,
it's
it
not
would
worth
be.
adding all that if you're taking away this thing that people, or like maybe even just to go back to history. If we always had this, the shot heard around the world would have never happened
Yep, that is
because
true.
that was the best two out. That was a tiebreaker series. Like if
Yeah,
we don't, like
yeah, but yeah, I guess at the same time, especially like with I guess ever since, because I mean a lot of these new rules were also like implemented at a time where COVID was like more of a thing than maybe
yeah,
it is now. I mean, it's still like a thing, but like so like they were I think feel like they definitely still wanted to have like like limiting travel and like keeping the games a little shorter. That's like kind of why they kept like the the ghost runner rule around. And like yeah, and then I think they came up with like the balanced schedule where they like switched that up to kind of like kind of ease up on the travel a little bit. Even though really like it would be easier to just play the teams in your region or your division like 19 times. That I feel like that would be pretty limiting travel.
it's
But
like I think
uh,
any sport thrives on rivalries, and I mean, if nothing else, I mean, I think we can both say this for both our teams. Man, you look forward to those division games, or maybe that one team in particular that you're going to play 19 times, and you're like every single win over them. I mean,
it's
it feels like
huge.
the adrenaline needle from Pulp Fiction, and every loss feels like you just got hit by a truck. Like that's what the sport's based on. That's how it sucks you in. And
Yeah,
then we go away from that where it's like sometimes by the end of July you've finished playing a division team already. And it's like, for
right.
what?
Yeah, it's like, oh, we just don't see you again till
Yeah,
maybe the playoffs, if anything.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a little like yeah, that's a little crazy. Yeah, like even like this year, like obviously it's not a division rivalry, but like the Yankees and Astros, for all intents and purposes, are rivals, and like they were done with each other in like early May, and it was just like, oh,
That's
okay, so
right.
like at the time I was like, all right, cool, like see you never, but now I'm like, all right, like maybe there is a good chance maybe we'll see them again in the playoffs, which honestly I would not be looking forward to. That's a very different team now, not one that I necessarily want to play or try to get revenge against. Maybe they're not as complete a team as like those teams that went to the World Series all those times and won a few, but
It's
you
still
know
them.
yeah, it's still them and it's still us, and there is something kind of intimidating about Minute Maid Park. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there is something that makes that like a very tough place to play, especially for us. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, like just to kind of put a bow on this, like I guess I could understand why if you're playing a game 163 for the wild card, say it's like the Mets and the Padres, I could see why they wouldn't want the Mets to fly all the way to San Diego, and then if they beat the Padres, then they have to fly, all the way back to, Philadelphia or whatever to play the
I remember that.
Phillies.
I remember that almost happened in 2018, where for a minute it was like Oakland could catch the Yankees and host the wild card, and it was like, well, they're not going to catch Boston, so that's going to be the wild card game. Like
Yeah,
it was pretty determined that no one else was going to catch those two.
it
That
was
was going
just
to be
like
the
a
wild
matter
card
of
game. It was who was going to host. So there
yeah,
was a
just
chance that the
where
Yankees were going to have to go out there, and if they won, come back.
yeah, and then
Like that
come
would
all
have.
the way back to Boston. Yeah, I do remember that actually. Like now it's like it's like coming back to me, like because I remember like looking back, it's like, oh yeah, we won that wild card game, and then there was that other nationwide power outage that happened, the great nationwide outage of 2018.
Well, I thought this was 03. You said it was 03. What you mean?
Well, 03 was the 03 was like the one that actually happened where like for 3 days in like New York nobody
I
had
actually
power.
do have a funny story about that. So when that happened, that weekend we were supposed to fly up to New Jersey. My aunt was getting married. And literally and this was back when we had flights to, because there is an airport where I live, like just over the bridge. And the way you fly to New York is it's like a 1 hour flight to Atlanta. You hop over another terminal and then you go to New York. We are literally going out the door. We're packed. We're putting our stuff in the car. We had the TV on, and they broke in to be like, yeah, New York City just had a blackout. We don't know what's going on. So literally, like, everyone else is getting in the car, and I had to run out and be like, guys, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I was actually on vacation like when that happened. I was in Pennsylvania at like I don't know if you know the resort. It's called like Woodlock Pines. Have you ever heard of that place? It's kind of by like the
I
Poconos.
have.
Yeah, like me and my family used to go on vacation there like every summer. And we were there like when it happened. So we were like in our like room watching the news, like watching society collapse in New York, and I was like, this is kind of funny.
But we had done a thing where we were going to send all of our or like at least some of the bags ahead to New York, because it's like, hey, we want to make sure whatever we're wearing for the wedding is there. And we don't want a problem. So it's like we got to Atlanta and all that everything went up to New York, but we couldn't go. So it's like, they're like, yeah, we're not accepting any flights at this time. So we literally slept in the clothes that we had worn for that day before. And we had to get up at like 5 a.m. because it's like, all right, if you were on this flight that was canceled, like, be here first thing in the morning. We're gonna have a spare flight for everyone. We're gonna fly into Boston, and then you're gonna wait there. So we had to sleep in our clothes at this hotel like 2 miles down the road from the Atlanta airport. And then
did they put you guys up, or did you have to pay for it? Or do you not remember that detail?
Well, we're going on. I think we got refunded for that because, like, seriously, who plans a power outage?
Yeah.
But yeah, then we had to go to Boston, and then we sat in Boston for like 4 hours before they're like, yeah, everything's up and running again.
You're good.
You're good to go.
That was probably like the biggest sigh of relief.
Flying into New York, and you could see where the lines for the gas stations were and everything. That was funny.
Sheesh. Yeah, it's always crazy times when that happens. I'm watching Nick Castellanos get into a benches clearing brawl with the Tampa Bay Rays. That happened earlier. So
I was like, I'm like, you.
No, I was not segueing. A nationwide power outage into Castellanos going yard, but he did get plunked. So he may have, or no, he.
I'm just glad you waited to bring this up until after the Ed Kranepool segment. That would have been distasteful.
Oh yeah, for sure. I wouldn't disrespect Ed Kranepool.
I don't know if we're gonna be having this podcast again.
Yeah, not for I don't know if it'll be here or for the Ascension Podcast Network. I want to apologize to the people that don't write my paychecks. But yeah,
I have some people that can vouch for me.
I'd like to think. I'd like to think at least. But yeah, so Mets are doing their thing. Doesn't quite look like they're going to win tonight. It looks like they're down to their final out. But you keep winning series, and
you got a chance to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, they have a chance
out there. You go out, you win tomorrow. Hey, 2 out of 3.
Yeah, so you got Manaea versus, I'm looking at the pitching matchup now, versus this Francis fella.
He's been kind of decent for about 2 months now. That does worry me a little bit.
Yeah, at first I was like, wait, who is this guy? And then like I look at his numbers, he's got like a 3.72 ERA and 81 strikeouts. So yeah, it does look like he's strung together a few good starts. But you have Manaea, he's been pretty reliable for you. He should match up, fairly well against the Blue Jays lineup. So yeah, you win that rubber game, which I just learned like 3 weeks ago what that actually means, and you and then you move on to
Philadelphia.
Yep. Then you're on to Philly, and you kind of hope. I know that Philly had been reeling for a while. They kind of caught fire again there. They've won
Although
8 of their last 10.
the
So
big thing tonight was Schwarber left the game with an elbow issue, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, no, that is true. You don't want to see those things. You don't want to see like stuff like that happen. You want to play a team at full strength. Because especially a team like the Phillies, it would just feel good to be like, oh yeah, like we swept you, or we won that series, and you had all your guys. Like there is no excuse, there is no asterisk next to this one. But when you get those, but those things happen, and when you get those breaks, you do got to take advantage of them. That lineup is, even without Schwarber, that lineup is intimidating enough, and with Schwarber, it's like damn near like how the fuck do we even pitch to them?
We got Quintana on Friday night, and he'll face Aaron Nola. So, and Nola's always done well against us. Saturday might go in our favor because it's Colby Allard against Severino. I do want to mention it because I don't think I have here on the show, but I do want to give Severino a lot of credit because I think it got brought up. It was either around the end of July or early August that he had already hit his highest innings total since 2018. And I remember as soon as they said that, I'm like, oh no, here comes the fall off the cliff. Like, understandably, not as a slight. It's like, yeah, you haven't thrown this much in 6 years. So it'd be understandable if you were out of gas. For the most part, he's continued to put up at least the kind of outings that have allowed us to be in games. He's even won a few on his own. And I give him a lot of credit. I don't know if he'll be back next year. I don't know if the front office is thinking about it, but if this is the 1 year that he does have in Queens, I give him all the credit in the world for being able to turn it around. I know last year and the year before that had not been easy for him. And then you add all the injuries to that. But he came out of a very tough spot, and I'm sure he's fighting fatigue like hell right now because, he's not used to this, but he's doing a great job at keeping this team in it. So I give him that. And then on Sunday, it'll be Christopher Sanchez, who did make the All-Star team, but kind of has come back to earth a little bit in the second half. And
I remember we were talking about how he didn't really need to be there.
The plan right now is that Tyler McGill starts that series. That might change. More than likely, what I think will happen is they'll probably have Peterson start that game instead of having Tyler McGill in Citizens Bank Park, which is disastrous. But also, David Peterson kind of looked like 2023 Peterson tonight. So, also, it's Philly. I mean, we've had plenty of horror show series in that part before, too. So, we have 7 against the Phillies in the next 2 weekends. And then we also have the 3 left with the Braves. And we have 16, 17 games left. It's
and
not great.
more than half of them are against you're not really chasing the Phillies at this point. Like I'd say the division's pretty, division's a wrap at this point. And
if by some stroke of luck we got there, great. But you can't really think about that. Not right now.
But 2 teams in your division that, are, 2 of the better teams in your division. So
but if there's one thing that Philly fans want in this world, it's not a World Series. It's ruining the Mets season. And the fact that they spent half of their 2008 World Series parade talking about us tells me that. So
I can relate to that. That's kind of how that's kind of how the Red Sox. That's kind of how the Red Sox have been. That's kind of been their MO. Like that in 2018 when the Red Sox won the World Series. And credit to them, they were definitely like the best team that year, like far and away. No one could really touch them. But they won the World Series, relatively easily against the Dodgers. They beat them in 5. And then at their parade, I think Alex Cora said something like, we scored 16 at Yankee Stadium, stuck on it. It's like, all right, dude, that was almost a month ago at this point. And congratulations. You beat us in the division series. You just won the World Series. Why are you worried? Why are you so obsessed with me?
But I also can only say but so much because my favorite win of the Bucks winning the Super Bowl a couple years ago was ending the Saints' run of contention.
True.
So
true. And I'm sure
I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I'm sure some shade was thrown at them at at the parade, maybe. I can't confirm that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was.
It's okay though, because if you ask a Saints fan, they swept us in the regular season, and that's somehow bigger.
That's somehow that's more impressive and matters more, especially in a fake COVID regular season. It wasn't fake, but
All right, let's relax.
All right, let's on that note, let's move on because we're going off the rails here. So chances are we're gonna cut part 1 of the episode here. So chances are we're gonna cut part 1 and we're gonna kind of drop the episode in like 3 different sections. So we will cut part 1 here, but do not worry, the rest of the content that you are accustomed to will be coming up shortly. So we will take a quick pause, and then we'll be on to the New York Yankees.